Hello everyone, it's Becky here. So today I'm going to finish sketching on this page spread that I did in yesterday's class on Etchr Studio. Okay, so I'm going to sketch these little Brussels sprouts in the corner of my journal. I'm going to sketch it on the white space right over here. So before I start drawing with my ink pen, I've already visualized the placement and sizes of the Brussels sprouts on the white space. So starting with the outline and then just drawing those little veins on these little balls. So notice these tiny little surfaces are curvy. So when I'm drawing the leaves and the veins, I'm paying attention to the curve on the surface, and I'm using a lot of organic curvy lines. They're really cute. Add tiny bit of hatching. These are pretty simple and fun to draw. So when I'm drawing the veins, I'm trying to see the three-dimensional shape of these Brussels sprouts. These are not flat shapes. These are spherical shapes. And some of the veins look kind of like bending around the curve of these ball shapes. Okay, so I just want to show you the three-dimensional idea of these Brussels sprouts. So these are little distorted spheres, okay? So basically, if I simplify those Brussels sprouts in front of me, they kind of look like these. These are like little spheres. They're kind of like this, okay? But the real things are more complex. The light source is coming from the right-hand side, and so the left-hand side is in shade, okay? Pretty much the same thing, just a little bit difference. Kind of like the moon. Nice and round. These areas are in shade, okay? So now as you can see my shading, these parts I'm not doing any hatching. I'm hatching only on the left-hand side, left-hand side, left-hand side, left-hand side, and this one too, we're gonna add a bit of hatching here. Okay, right-hand side top are pretty bright. And now I'm ready to paint. As always, I wet the areas first with clear water. And the first layer is always the lightest tone and the most watery. It's a mix of light green and lemon yellow, or a bit of yellow ochre. Wet on wet, a darker tone of green, viridian green mixed with yellow ochre. And use very small brush strokes and leaving tiny spaces, with the original first layer color, because I want to show the texture of the veins. Very small, a variety of different brush strokes. And now adding an even darker shade of green on top. Pretty much wet on wet too, making the green darker by mixing a bit of brown and a bit of ultramarine blue. Again, using very small brush strokes. So I'm leaving out some spaces from previous layers to show the organic form of the veins. So in this way, they look more three-dimensional. And now I'm adding the shadows with leftover gray that I mixed by myself by mixing blue, purple, and green together. And now I just have the top space there to fill. Okay, so now I'm cooking dinner. I'm making some chicken stew. And so I cannot really leave the kitchen. I have about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes to do a sketch in my art journal. Okay, I'm gonna sketch from the other side of the kitchen counter so I can see from the other smaller windows. So I will actually be more focused on this view rather than everything around. So not this one, but I want to focus more on this one just to keep it simple. So I'm just gonna sketch on the square space on my right hand side, starting with the light, the street light, and then connecting the rooftop behind it. Adding a bit of texture along the way for the roof. Adding windows below. Some little bushes down there. Sidewalk, and then drawing in the windows with solid black. Drawing very quickly of the trees, using almost a blind contour way to do it. So as I said before, the faster I draw, the more loose the line seems like. And I really like to keep tree forms pretty loose. Adding the houses and windows in between. Adding some textures for this roof. And then adding this car in the foreground. I think adding the objects in the foreground is really important to bring a sense of depth. Adding the trees behind. Now ready to paint again, and I'm painting the sky area first by wetting it with water. Adding some orange, very watery. It's sunset time, so there's quite a bit of orange pink in the clouds. And then some dark blue, some purplish blue for the top for the shade of clouds. Adding another layer of darker blue so it looks more, there's more transition of colors. And painting pretty much everything with a tone of yellow because the things around sunset looks really golden. Painting the grass and the trees. This is just the first layer to keep it really light. Mix of green and lemon yellow. Second layer is darker. Viridian green with a bit of brown mixed in. Adding a bit of magenta for the flowers on that tree there. Dark brown for the roofs. Bit of shade for the houses. A darker color for the road. Adding a darker tone of green for the tree here. So there's more contrast. Add some more shades. Okay, so it is almost dinner time and I have no time to decide what to do for this one. So I just picked something from my dining table. Just one simple apple, and I'm gonna fill that square space there with this apple. So I kind of visualize the placement of the apple first before I draw. As always, starting with this unique outline. Every single apple in this world has a different outline. Drawing the dent and the stem there, adding a bit of shade texture for the surface. Following the three-dimensional form of the spherical shape. All apples are in the form of complex spherical shapes, and the textures on it follows the curve. Now we're ready to paint again. Again, wet the area first. Adding a light tone first. A mix of lemon yellow and light green. And now, wet on wet, some red, using very thin brush strokes, just to suggest the texture on the apple. Now adding another layer of darker magenta with less paint, with less water and more paint pigment. And again, I'm just using brush strokes over, not doing any blending, because if I blend into the green, the color of the apple is going to turn really muddy. So just be pretty cautious. Add some dark shade for the inside of the dent and the side of the apple. Mix a bit of green to the magenta to make a shade color. And finally adding the shadow. First layer. Add another layer around the corners. So there's a nice transition. So here is the look of this spread. In the final stage. Here it is. So as you can see, there are juxtaposition here, right? So juxtaposition is like the contrast between the sizes of real things. For example, like these objects are around the same size as my living room, and that apple is around the same size as this scenery over here. It's a great play of composition and juxtaposition.